Sunday afternoon, morning to listen to us. I promise you it will be well worth your while. So my name is Jacqueline Dunn, and as you've just heard, I used to be an accountant. Everything changed for me about 12 years ago now, so nearly 13. So it came down to a couple of incidences that occurred in my life that changed everything for me, and I'm not going to go into all of them because that would be a very long talk, but I'm going to tell you about what happened with my mum specifically. So I was very close to my mum, and she got very ill. She got a condition called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and I watched her go from fiercely independent to steroid dependent to oxygen dependent, and then on the 28th of January 2013 I held her hand as she passed away. 5 days later my dad also died. At this point, when people hear this story, they say, were they in a car accident together? No, they both died of diet and lifestyle related conditions. Well, did your dad die of a broken heart? No, they didn't actually like each other. Hadn't been together for 30 years. That is the way the cookie crumbled, and it changed everything for me. Because there I was at 35 years old, a mum to a 1- and 4-year-old at the time, and I had an autoimmune condition. I had a condition called pernicious anemia, where I had to have B12 injected because my body wasn't making it. And I thought that was okay, I'll accept that. I had to have an injection every month. Some people have to have an injection every mealtime if they've got diabetes. I'll take that, that's fine. But then when my mum and dad died, and my mum died of COPD, but she'd smoked for very many years, it was glamorised smoking. I've got a photograph of my mum heavily pregnant with me in her tummy, and she's smoking, and there's an ashtray on her tummy. And I was born with asthma, and then had chest infection after chest infection all through my early years, and was always on antibiotics. And my dad was a long distance lorry driver. He used to stop at every greasy spoon for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and his job was very sedentary. But again, this is the generation that was told to eat margarine because butter's bad for them. We didn't have any knowledge or information given to us that could help us empower ourselves to make better choices. And I wanted to change that, and I did change it. So to cut a very long story short, I haven't had a B12 injection for 14 years. The reason being is that I decided to take ownership of my own health. I healed myself after studying nutrition. This is what changed my career. I started studying nutrition, become so obsessed with studying health that I then went on to study holistic health coaching, and then I went on to study homeopathy, and then I became a bioresonance practitioner, and then I opened a clinic in Essex, and then I opened a clinic in Liverpool, and then I wrote a book about health, and it's gone on and it's gone on and it's gone on, and now I'm a Zinzino partner, and this is probably the thing that has changed for me the most significantly with regards to health. So I'm going to cover that. This is my dream. So at the moment, what we have is a system where we are handing control of your health over to a qualified professional, educated in a pharmaceutical model. And this model usually just silences symptoms. That's what was happening with my mum. She was on steroids, her symptoms were just being silenced, they weren't being dealt with. In fact, I specifically remember a moment when I was in a consultation with my mum's respiratory consultant, and my mum said to the consultant, is there anything that I should be doing with my diet that might be able to help me? And he said, no, my darling, eat what you like. Now, the right answer to that would have been, I'm not qualified in nutrition, you need to go and see a nutritionist if you want to know that. Just like if somebody asks me about medication, most of the time I'll say, I'm not qualified in pharmaceuticals. So everybody needs to know their place, but that doesn't happen. These kind of things that can help us and empower us are often shunned by the medical community. Now, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. I'm not anti-pharma. I have a reputation of being anti-pharma, but I'm not. I think it holds a very strong place, but we are overusing it, and we are overusing it for things that we don't necessarily need to use it for. So it's amazing for emergency medicine. If I was in a car accident, I wouldn't say, can you take me to my homeopath? I'd say, can you take me to A&E? It holds a strong place in society, but we've become too dependent on it, and it's actually making people more sick and not better in the main. So this is the system we have at the moment. We're silencing symptoms, and we're not investigating root causes. What I would dream of having is this new paradigm of health where we can gain control over the decisions and actions affecting our health and well-being and understand and respond out to our body's needs. And that way we can start to address root causes and return our body to balance, back to homeostasis. We're not silencing symptoms, we're taking ownership. But how do we do that in this system that we have been taught as soon as you get sick, you go to see a doctor? And obviously that's not serving us particularly well, because we've only got to look at stats to see that cancer, heart disease, diabetes, all of these conditions are increasing, they're not getting any better. So it's time for a change. It's time for a change. And if we don't transform this, we're going to transfer it to the next generation. Now, put your hand up if you are happy to transfer to the next generation what we've got right now, the system we've got right now. You're happy to transfer it to the next generation?
No.
No one is. Because we know, our generation knows it's not working, so we need to do something about it. We need to have a different way of doing things. So we know health-related problems are increasing, and it's time to ask why. Why is this happening? We also know that once upon a time, this wasn't happening. We actually had a system where food was our medicine, it gave us all the nutrients we needed, and we could actually get what we needed from natural sources. Unfortunately, that has changed quite significantly. So what we have now is we have an illusion of choice. So this is where I have a conversation with my children, and I'll say to them, when I was a little girl, and they go, when dinosaurs roamed the earth? When I was a little girl, there was 8 to 10, that would have been a really big one, 8 to 10 aisles in a supermarket. And those aisles were made up of fruit and veg, meats, dairy. There wasn't an entire row of cereals. There wasn't an entire row of confectionery. There wasn't 30 or 40 different crisp flavours. You know, we didn't have a McDonald's on every street corner. I used to have it once a year as a birthday treat. We've really changed the way that we're eating, and this is why. Because there's an illusion of choice. It looks like, wow, we've got all of this choice now, but actually they're coming from a couple of companies, only a handful of companies, all the same choice. And these companies are going to be quite conspiratorial, I guess, to say that these companies are quite nefarious. They don't have your best interests at heart. They're all using what we call bliss point technology. So please research bliss point technology if you haven't heard of it. Don't take my word for anything I'm saying today. Go and do your due diligence. Bliss point technology is the combination of fat, sugar and salt that's in a product that starts to change the way that your hormones are behaving. So it will change ghrelin and leptin, which is hunger and satiety. It upregulates hunger, it downregulates satiety, and it also starts to produce more dopamine, which is the hormone that makes you feel good. So then those foods become very addictive, and then we eat more of them, and then these companies make more profit, because that's what they're interested in. They're not interested in whether the food causes diabetes because you ate too much of it. They're not interested in whether the food makes you obese because you ate too much of it. They're not interested in any kind of health condition that their foods might cause, and there's no legislation in this, by the way. It's absolutely legal to do this. They're interested in their bottom line, making more money. That's it. That's it. So we need to take some ownership and recognise the changes that we can make just by diet alone. Ultra-processed food has now become massively talked about in the mainstream. We're even seeing documentaries on the BBC, which are generally the last people that are ever going to report on things like this, but they are starting to talk about it. So I'm not saying anything that isn't already known. You know, we know this. We know that ultra-processed food is eaten in the main by, I'm going to give you a horrific stat now. Again, check it. If you're 16 and under, 85% of your diet is ultra-processed. That is so shocking. We're not doing much better, by the way, our age group. It's about 60% of the diet is ultra-processed. Absolutely shocking. And I'm really reluctant to even call it ultra-processed food, because it's not food, it's food-like substances. It's completely nutrient depleted. And it is making us sick. Look at these stats. So we can see that a 10% increase in consumption of ultra-processed food is a 10% increased risk of cancer, is a 15% increased risk of diabetes, is a 14% increased risk of early death, and that risk increases as you increase the amount of ultra-processed food that you're consuming. And it goes on. It affects aging, it affects inflammation. And at this point in time, as a food-first nutritionist, so when I first qualified a decade ago, I always used to say to my clients, try and get everything you can through your diet. It's nigh on impossible now. In just 10 years, it's nigh on impossible to get all the nutrients you need through diet alone. The soil's depleted, the food is sprayed with pesticides and fungicides and herbicides, the animals are eating food that we shouldn't be consuming, but we're consuming the animal that ate it. You know, this is the state of the food industry, and it's allowed to happen. So we need to take some ownership back, and we need to reclaim our health because it's being taken from us. And dare I say it, the Food and Drugs Agency are under the same umbrella. There's a reason for that. So this is where we're at. This is where we're at now in today's world. In 1935, only 10% of adults had one chronic disease, just 10%. And children, it was 2%. And most of that was attributed to genetics. But now, 2020, the most recent stats I could get, 60% of adults have one chronic disease and 40% of children have a chronic disease. And that will not be all genetics, let me tell you that for sure. And if we look at multiple diseases, in 1935 that was less than 5% of the population. 2022, 40% of the population have more than one chronic disease. So is our current paradigm of health working for us? No. Not really, not at all. And it goes on. IQ absolutely deteriorating. So I always say when I look at this slide, I'm really glad I'm not going to be alive when it's 2110, because I can't imagine the conversations that are going to go on. Even if there are conversations, I'll probably just be grunting. But this is what's happening. Fat is 60% of the brain. Remember that fact as I progress through the slides. Testosterone's falling as well, 59.3% decline in just 30 years. Now that's going to feed into lots of different issues, but the main one there, and we see evidence of this on a daily basis, is fertility issues. It is increasingly difficult for women to fall pregnant naturally now. Interventions are happening more and more. And when I first started my bioresonance clinic, which would have been 6 years ago, I actually said, I think we're about 10 years away from people not being able to fall pregnant naturally. And here we are 6 years later, and we're almost there. It's happening. So there's lots of studies on this. As I said, do your due diligence. Please don't just think that everything I'm saying is absolutely true. Go and have a look for yourself and find out, see what resonates with you. But there's many, many studies that you'll find on places like Google Med, PubMed. This one I've just plucked out, which is about the effect of ultra-processed food on the gut microbiome and how that impacts the gut, which is obviously very significant because not only is it our second brain, it is where most of our immune system resides as well. So in short, we are slowly being poisoned by the modern diet. We are increasing inflammation because the food that we're having is inflammatory, it's pro-inflammatory. And that's a problem because inflammation is the precursor to every disease. Whether it's a cough, a cold, or cancer, you become inflamed before you become sick. And that also significantly increases your risk of cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 killer worldwide, but it's the #1 killer of women in the UK. And it's very, very unlikely when a woman goes to a GP and speaks about heart issues that they will go away with any kind of prescription. It's usually fobbed off as anxiety or panic attacks, and that's why more women are dying of heart issues because it's picked up a lot later. It's the biggest killer in the UK. And we also have food that is void in fibre. So we are destroying our microbiome, and fibre helps to stabilise blood sugar levels, so our blood sugar's all over the place, which feeds into lots of hormonal issues and of course diabetes. And unfortunately, in the UK, we are winning the race that no country should be winning. We have the lowest fibre consumption in the world, even worse than America. which absolutely, I think, find that stunning. But we do. And so our food is also completely void of nutrients, especially if it's ultra processed. And we then have mineral and vitamin deficiencies being created, which impacts the immune system and the immune response. So overall, we're becoming inflamed, it's affecting our gut, and it's affecting our immune response, the way that we're eating. And I personally eat very well. I eat an anti-inflammatory diet, and I try and get as much nutrient density as I can, but even then, you're still going to struggle to get all the nutrients you need because the way the food industry is producing food now. So let's have a look at that. We used to eat food very close to Mother Nature. Food used to be sown in fields, grown in fields, and it was very natural and far less interfered with than it ever was. But at the turn of the Industrial Revolution, that changed drastically. Food was no longer grown, it was produced in plants and factories. And this meant that food was now becoming low in key nutrients, vitamins, minerals, very high in sugar, and also very low in fibre. And that perfect balance of Omega-6 to Omega-3 that once upon a time was very easy to maintain started to go out of balance. So the history of Omega-6 to Omega-3. So really, in an ideal world, we'd be 1-to-1. So we would have as much Omega-6 as we have Omega-3. Science recommends a 3-to-1 ratio. The reason science recommends a 3-to-1 ratio is because Omega-6 increases inflammation. Now, that's a bit alarming when you think that Omega-6 is quite high in ultra-processed foods, in seed oils and white carbohydrates and grains, lots of Omega-6. So our Omega-6 is going up and up and up in today's world. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. It reduces inflammation. We cannot get it in our own bodies in terms of making it ourselves. We have to get it through diet. And where do we get it from? In the main, things like oily fish, and not many people are eating much oily fish these days for a couple of reasons. The sea's very contaminated, mercury and microplastics, and also a lot of fish is farmed. So it's really hard to get good quality line caught fish, and if you can find it, if you're lucky enough to find it, it's really expensive. So the amount you would have to eat to balance out your 6-to-3 ratio would be so significant and expensive. So what we're seeing, science recommends 3-to-1. We do want to be able to get inflamed sometimes. It's part of our healing mechanism. If you get sick, like a cough or a cold, your anti-inflammatory responses will help you. But you need to get inflamed. It's part of your healing mechanism. But we don't want to stay inflamed, because then we're in chronic inflammation. And this is the issue that we're seeing. So science recommends 3-to-1. The turning point, just before 1960s, around 1940, 4-to-1, at the turn of the Industrial Revolution. This is when they started to tamper with food. And then it just gets progressively worse. So the European average is 15-to-1, and the global average is 25-to-1. I have seen test results personally as bad as 89-to-1, which was in an 11-year-old boy, who I'll speak a little bit about later. And the worst test result the company's ever seen is 300-to-1, which had to go back to the lab 3 times to have another double-blind gold standard test because they couldn't believe that somebody was that out of balance.
I'm still alive.
Yeah.
So the consequences of being out of balance, and the consequence of having too much Omega-6 and not enough Omega-3. Well, remember I said the brain is 60% fat, so we're going to see a reduction in brain function quite significantly. Now, we're at a point in history where neurological conditions are at an epidemic level. Alzheimer's and dementia, and I'm even seeing so many more cases of epilepsy. And even clinically, if you're being treated for epilepsy clinically, one of the things that a clinician will often recommend is a ketogenic diet, which is a high-fat diet. And that's because fat fuels the brain. But a high-fat diet is actually really hard to follow, so there's easier ways that we're going to speak about. So reduced brain function, definitely. We'll also see a reduction in our hair quality and our skin quality, because the body's becoming more inflamed. And there's a kind of new word that's being bandied about recently called inflammaging. So you're aging quickly because you're more inflamed. We see that with a 6-to-3 ratio. And then reduced heart function. So Omega-3 is so significant to the cardiovascular system. We need a really good balance of Omega-3 in the body to support the heart. And then we see the skin losing elasticity, again with inflammation, organ functions change, joints and muscle pains, such a significant one. Joints and muscle pains because we have inflammation building up around the joints. Now I'm just going to pause on this slide for 1 minute, and because we've got a room full of women, I'm going to ask, is there a point in a woman's life where they start to get brain fog, hair starts to fall out, heart issues that start to occur, joints start to hurt, they start to age? What point in a woman's life is that? Anyone know? Menopause. The reason being, it's not a coincidence, estrogen is a natural form of anti-inflammatory. It actually reduces inflammation. And every month when we produced estrogen on a monthly basis, we had a nice spurt of anti-inflammatory content into our body. However, during menopause, your estrogen declines, so you're going to start to become more inflamed. And what happens? Woman goes to the GP, starts to say, I've got brain fog, I've got joint pain, I keep getting heart palpitations, and GP says, probably without a single test, oh well, you're 48, you're probably going through menopause, let's put you on HRT. One of the things that I am super passionate about and I'm an activist for is body autonomy, medical freedom, and the right to make informed choices.
Woo!
That is not important.
Come on!
Why isn't the GP, which absolutely should know that estrogen is a natural anti-inflammatory, and when it starts decreasing, you're going to become more inflamed, why isn't the GP saying every single one of your symptoms is a sign of inflammation? Do some anti-inflammatory support first. If your symptoms don't go, come back, we'll run some bloods, maybe it's menopause. That would be medical freedom, body autonomy, and the right to make an informed choice. But you show me a doctor's surgery that actually happens in. It doesn't. So it also affects every single cell in your body. We have 37 trillion cells in our body. And if you have an imbalance of Omega-6 and Omega-3, your cells are going to become very hard and rigid. Now, of all of those cells, we want them to be soft, permeable, we want them to start to absorb our food, and we also need them to excrete waste. Because if waste stays in a cell for too long, that becomes a toxin. So we need our food to be coming in, the nutrients from our food, absorbed in the cell, and then waste coming out, nice, soft, flexible, and spongy. But if you're out of balance in your omega-6 to 3 ratio and you have too much omega-6, what we see instead is we see a very hard, rigid cell. It becomes like an eggshell, so nutrients can't penetrate and waste can't get out. But when we return to a good balance of omega-6 to 3, whether we're 3 to 1 or less, cells actually improve significantly, and then we can start to absorb more from our diet. So if you are like me and you're eating an organic diet, if you've got hard, rigid cells, you're not really going to be absorbing all the nutrients that you need. It's going to start to become quite a waste. So this is something that absolutely needs to change. So there is a very simple test to take, but you can find out if your omega-6 to 3 ratio is in balance. It's a dry blood spot test. It's done at home. It can be done right here today if you like, and it is a simple finger prick of blood onto blotting paper, sent to an independent lab in Norway, and you have some very specific information coming back to you within 2 weeks so that you can start to empower yourself to make better choices about your health. The thing that I love about this test, as a practitioner, I offer a lot of tests in my clinics, and some of them are extremely expensive, in excess of £400, £500, £600 per test. Now when you get that test result back, it might not tell you very much. Can I ring up the lab and say, hi, it didn't tell me much, can I have a refund? They would laugh down the phone. If you are in balance, Zinzino give you a refund. Caveat, only 3% of people are, so don't hold out for that refund. They will do it because they're an ethical company. It's a scientifically backed test. It's home administered, so that's health empowerment. We don't have to give our power away to a phlebotomist or a doctor to take some bloods. It's completely anonymous. So I said it's double-blind gold standard. That basically means that inside that test box is a code, and that code is the only thing that links you to the test. you don't put your name, you don't put your date of birth. The lab have no information about you whatsoever, apart from this blood is linked to this particular code. The lab doesn't know if it's your first test, second test, third test, no idea. They're a completely independent lab, and they're partnered with some of the most renowned medical institutes in the world. So they're not just used by Zinzino, they're also used by Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford, King's College, and Professor Tim Spector's Zoe app tests the blood at Vitas Analytical Services in Norway. So we have done, I need to update that figure there, because it's now over 1.5 million tests worldwide have been done by Zinzino at Vitas Analytical Services, completely anonymously sent. And what we see is that, on average, 97% of people are significantly out of balance. So 97% of people are out of balance. In my experience, that out of balance isn't just 4 to 1, 5 to 1. We're looking at the 15s, the 20s, the 30s, and as I mentioned, the worst test I've done is 89 to 1. In some countries, 99% of people are out of balance. So, this particular test was done by a lady in 2020. This lady was very reluctant to take the test. She said, I know a lot about health. I don't need to take this test. I'm not going to be inflamed. I eat healthy. Please just leave the test and give it to somebody else. There was persistence, and eventually the test was taken. And when the test result came back, this lady was so shocked and surprised, because she thought she was doing everything right. She ate well, and you can see up here, she was even taking an Omega-3 supplement at the time that she took the test. And her test was still 17 to 1 out of balance. Her Omega-3 index, which is a globally recognised scientific benchmark for cardiovascular disease, you should be higher than 4%, but ideally about 10 or 12. If you're under 4%, you're at the highest risk of cardiovascular disease. Hers was 2.2%. She was very rude, and she was adamant she was going to be fine. Mental strength, 4 to 1. Cell membrane, so remember we want those soft, flexible cells. 20 to 1. Her cells were inflamed. But actually, her arachidonic acid, she was right about one thing, was optimal, which means she didn't have loads of Omega-6 coming through her diet. This wasn't diet that was causing this. There was something else going on. So this lady was me. This was my test. And the most strange thing about this test, I took this test in 2020, and I actually joined Zinzino as a partner in 2023. So I still wanted to use the product, do it myself, thinking I could change it by diet at first. That didn't work. So when I say she was rude, she was arrogant, and she thought she knew it all, she really did. And I love to say that because it was me. The part of her test that revealed a lot, part of my test that revealed a lot, is we test 11 fatty acids. And in the Omega-3 section, you can see how out of balance, how deficient I was in Omega-3. So if I come over this side, we've got ALA, EPA, and DHA, but EPA is like your fire extinguisher in your body. That's what starts with, if you're inflamed, that's what starts to make you less inflamed. I didn't have a fire extinguisher, it was deficient, it was empty, it was minus 84%. And I was taking an Omega-3 supplement. And then obviously no better with the other ones, they're all significantly under. So I was very deficient in Omega-3, that's why I was 17 to 1 out of balance, even though I was taking an Omega-3. So I said, can you get me on a call with someone from the scientific advisory team? Because I want to know why my Omega-3 is not working. And so I was straight on a call, which is the most amazing thing about this company. You look at these guys, they are world renowned, best in their field, and they are literally at the end of the phone if you need them. And I was put on a call with Dr. Paul Clayton. Dr. Paul Clayton is a clinical pharmacologist. He actually started his career in pharmaceuticals. He realised very quickly that they weren't making anyone better, and he transitioned into the supplement world, and now he formulates the Zinzino supplements. He's published 200 peer-reviewed studies, and most of them have been on Omega-3. And he said to me, I'm sorry, Jacqueline, but no Omega-3s work. And I was like, wow, okay, I've got lots of clients taking Omega-3s, why do none of them work? So I'm not going to explain that. I'm going to leave that to Dr. Colin Robertson and play a short video. He is our Chief Product Officer, and he's going to explain why omega-3s are not all equal.
As a researcher, we always look for the best available evidence, and there was a paper published in 2018 that concluded that standard omega-3 simply didn't bring about a meaningful change. And that was really where this segue came in, and someone opened up my mind to this company from the Scandinavia, as it was described, called Zinzino. It was a good friend of mine who'd had some health issues and had been advised by his physician to take this product because it was the only one that worked. And I was skeptical because I'd read every kind of report that told me none of it worked. So why would it be different? And the difference came down to two parts that I found compelling. Part one was the fact that it was test-based nutrition. I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist. Test and analysis is everything that we do. If we can't measure it to a certain extent, we don't believe it actually happened. And not only was there a test, but the test was housed, was administered and managed by one of the most reputable laboratories in the world. So this captured my interest. I knew that something different was going on here. And then I looked at the product and realized that there was genius behind the innovation. And the genius was really, really simple. Because in nature, wherever we find that omega-3, it's naturally bound to the polyphenol. And what Zinzino had done, uniquely and successfully, was rebind the polyphenol. So before I looked at anything else, I knew that what we had here was disruptive. It was a huge change to the industry.
So just to explain that a little bit further, there is a purification process that has to happen when we take products from the ocean, because as I said, it's very contaminated. We have microplastics, mercury. So if we're taking products from the ocean, fish or algae, they have to go through a purification process. Now in nature, as Dr. Colin was explaining, fish eat algae, and we have omega-3, and then we have an antioxidant to protect the omega-3 from turning rancid. That's how nature has it, and that's perfect. But unfortunately, nature is also contaminated. So if you're eating lots of fish, you're getting that. But the purification process removes the contaminants. Brilliant. It also destroys the polyphenols. So now we don't have anything to stop the product from turning rancid, which means by the time it gets to the cell, it's already oxidized and is starting to increase inflammation. That's why my test was so significantly bad, and that's why my omega-3 just wasn't being absorbed, because it was actually increasing inflammation, not reducing it. That's a significant problem. What Zinzino do, which is completely different, is they rebind the polyphenols in the form of pure harvested extra virgin olive oil. So what we are left with is 60% omega-3 and 40% olive oil, which is a polyphenol to prevent it from oxidizing. So it can travel all the way to the cell. Those 37 trillion cells will start to turn soft and flexible, and you can start to absorb everything that you need to absorb through your diet. And we can do this, we can bring you back into balance in 120 days. And the reason 120 days is a significant number is because every 120 days, your red blood cells renew. So if we're taking blood and we see that you're out of balance in that particular blood test, that's an average of your last 120 days. If we then start to do something different, so in my case, I just stopped taking the omega-3 that I was using and I swapped it over with BalanceOil, the Zinzino product, and within 120 days, I was back in balance. I went actually from 17 to 1 to 1.9 to 1. And my omega-3 index, which was the most alarming thing for me, went from 2.2% highest risk of cardiovascular disease to 9% much safer zone. And that is a very typical result. We see this. So 97% of people are failing the first test, but 96% of people are passing the second test, all within 120 days. Now that is health empowerment, because we can give you some key statistics about your health and we can make it change within 120 days just by doing one simple thing consistently. So there were my results. 17 to 1 started with, went to 1.9 to 1, and I did that in 120 days. In fact, I took my test bang on 120 days because in my mind, I was going to prove them wrong. I was like, Dr. Cole, really skeptical, this isn't going to work. I bet my test is the same. When I got the test result back, I was like, okay, I'm in. But I still didn't join the business, I just started recommending it to other people through someone else. And eventually joined the business. I woke up eventually. So this is what we have. This is what is the game changer in the omega-3 industry. We have that 60% of pure fatty fish, wild, line caught and sustainable, and then we have the 40% pure harvested extra virgin olive oil as a synergistic formula. So the difference that makes is oil stability. So this test was actually done in 2010, but we are repeating it at the moment, so we have the most up-to-date stats. But what this test showed is krill oil, other omega-3 oils and cod liver oil turned rancid between 5 and 15 hours after consumption. It takes 20 hours to get to the cell. So it hasn't even got to the cell before it's starting to oxidize and increase inflammation. With BalanceOil, we actually stopped testing at 35 hours. It still hadn't turned rancid. So it'd been in the cell for 15 hours at that point. That's the difference, and that's the BalanceOil. Polyphenols to prevent oxidization, that perfect balance of EPA, DHA and DPA, all from wild fish. Synergistic vitamin D3, which is from sheep's lanolin, which is the most natural form of vitamin D3 that we can get, and that is to help with absorption, naturally sourced ingredients. Dosage is all taken by age, weight, and age, weight, and age and weight. That's it. That's simple. It's typical me, overcomplicating everything. Dosage is individualised. So it's not a 2 pills twice a day, one size fits all. It's completely individualised. We do have it in certain flavours, but everything's flavoured completely naturally. And it is needed for every point of life. So from baby, but we looked at fertility as well. And then as we grow, obviously our brain function, and then our immune system, reproductive system, and then as we age, the immune system starts to deteriorate, the cardiovascular system is impacted, and joints, obviously. And we don't make this. We need to take it, and we're not getting enough in our diet. The amount of conditions that we could significantly improve if we rebalanced our omega-3 levels blows my mind. I've seen it in my clinics. I just want to share with you a couple of tests, because another thing that I'm super passionate about is pregnancy of children. Because if you talk about a new health paradigm, if we get them before they've even been brought into the world, and they're brought into this world balanced, and we start to see generations of Zinzino babies that have that perfect balance of omega-6 to omega-3. Imagine what that's going to do to their neurological health. Imagine what that's going to do to their cardiovascular system. And in fact, we don't have to imagine, because there's studies to show that mothers that have a great balance of omega-6 to 3 have less incidences of postnatal depression, they have less incidences of early birth, and they have better birth sizes. They're giving birth to better, healthier babies. They also show better development of babies in their early years. So speech comes on quicker. All of that just by rebalancing their omega-6 to 3. Now the issue that we currently have, that we need your help with to get this out there and start changing the health of children, is that this test here at 65 to 1 was a pregnant woman. And this is very typical in pregnancy, because most women go into pregnancy already deficient. So if they're already deficient, they don't have enough to give the baby. So then we've got 2 people deficient, mum and baby. We have a midwife in Zinzino, she's based in Australia, and she is testing people every trimester to make sure that as the omega-3 changes, they change the dose, and they make sure that she's got enough for herself and for baby. And the birthing outcomes that she's seeing are quite phenomenal. So this could really shift. On this side, this is a result of a 2-year-old child. So this is 30 to 1. Now, a 2-year-old child may have been breastfed, and she may have got some omega-3 from mum, but not many 2-year-old children eat a lot of oily fish. But also, they're being born to mums that are already deficient, so they're starting on the back foot. We could significantly change this. I'm so passionate about making this change, because we have a world out there of unhealthy children, and it's not their fault. It's not their fault. They didn't ask to be born into this toxic world. But But we've got something so simple that can change this, and we can give them their health and their life back. Remember, what we don't transform, we transfer. And every single one of you said you're not happy to transfer it into the next world, into the next generation. So this is what we can do about it. This is our vehicle. We have lots of certifications. We are Friends of the Sea, we're in full sport. Lots of our ambassadors are sports professionals, and we do have lots of sports professionals paying for the oil. They're not paid to use it, they are choosing because they know the significant impact it has on their performance. Vegan society, gluten-free, soy-free, sugar-free, all the things that are important to a nutritionist like me. There are lots of health claims that I hear people making in Zinzino, but there are these ones that we are allowed to make because they have been approved by the European Food Standards Agency, and they're significant. You know, we're normalising triglyceride levels. That's people with heart issues. That's people on medication that we can normalise. We're helping to normalise blood pressure. We're fighting oxidative stress. Brain function improves, heart function improves, immune system improves, normal brain development in fetuses. Normal development of eyes in breastfed infants, visual development in infants up to 12 months of age. These are studies that we've done, and we're allowed to say this. This is not some grand claim. We have a tool that can significantly change the health of the next generation, but we need an army of people out there talking about it, because it changes nothing if nobody knows about it. We're not a one-trick pony either. We also have other products. We have Xenobiotic. Xenobiotic is 8 strains of dietary fibre. Remember, we're the country that consumes the less fibre. That unstabilises blood sugar levels. That creates diabetes. But we have this fibre blend, 8 strains of dietary fibre and a prebiotic. It is very powerful. I always say to my clients, start slowly, unless you like your toilet. Just start slowly. But it's amazing, and the people that have helped with things like constipation, and IBS, Crohn's, all of those things, absolutely incredible. Then we have a multivitamin, which is Extend. I was, again, like Dr. Cole, very sceptical about the multivitamin because in my world of nutritional therapy, multivitamins just make expensive urine. So I just thought, well, I probably won't use that until I understood the science behind it. So the reason that a multivitamin makes expensive urine is because we have a snatch and grab system. So if you are deficient in vitamin C and zinc, your body will snatch that, grab it and use it, and everything else gets flushed out. But what we do is we include an ingredient called beta-glucan. It's a fibre strain, and it stimulates the immune system just enough to downregulate the snatch and grab system. So you will end up absorbing every single one of the vitamins and minerals that are in Extend, which there's 23, I believe. So that's pretty significant. So when I said we're being poisoned by the modern diet, we're inflamed, we have gut health issues, and we have immune system issues, we also have a solution with the Zinzino Health Protocol for every single one of those. BalanceOil for inflammation, Xenobiotic for gut health, and Extend for the immune system. You can also add in Viva. Viva is absolutely amazing product. We call it a spa for the mind. It is a derivative of saffron called Affron. It's a patented ingredient, and it's combined with magnesium. It's an adaptogenic, so it will adapt to how your mind is functioning. If you're feeling wired, it's going to help you concentrate. If you feel like you need motivation, it will lift you up. I used this for my teenage daughter when she was doing her GCSEs. We're talking about a highly anxious girl that was struggling to sleep, having panic attacks, and I went quite high with the dose, 5 in the morning, 5 in the evening, and she was absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. To the point now, she's like, Mum, we're not going to run out of Viva, are we? So, we talk about that a lot in our house. When we went to the global conference in Norway last year, they launched the collagen product. Now, the collagen product, again, Mrs. Skeptical, I just thought, well, there's loads of collagens on the market, why is this one going to be any different? Well, it is, because it's Zinzino. And the reason it's different is we have a collagen that is using type 1 and type 2 collagen, so a collagen for skin and a collagen for gut. What's usually on the market is just a gut product or just a skin product. We're combining both here. We have 8 grams of liquid marine collagen from Arctic wild caught fish. That is the most absorbable form of collagen known to man. We have hyaluronic acid, so this is when it starts to impact the skin as well. And then we have the pre and postbiotic. Now it's working on the gut. And obviously collagen, well not obviously, but collagen does line our gut lining, so we do need to have lots of collagen, and we deplete it and don't make any more after the age of 35, which is why we become wrinkly. But this is magic. Trust me, like my daughter, we're not going to run out of Viva. I'm like, no one take my collagen, I'm not running out of collagen. I absolutely love it. And then this year, what we had is the long-awaited gut health test. So when we went to Oslo this year for the global conference, it was probably the worst kept secret in the world. There was lots of people whispering about they're going to bring this gut health test out. This test was 6 years in the making. In fact, Dr. Colin Robertson had said to the scientific advisory team, if we manage to be able to look at the gut with a finger prick of blood, it will be the equivalent of a moon landing. So when we all sat in the conference, and a spaceman appeared, walking across the stage in a NASA suit, we kind of knew what was coming, because that was his moon landing equivalent, and they launched the gut health test, which is absolutely phenomenal. I'm not going to go into the science of the gut health test. If you want to speak about that, come and find me, and I'm happy to talk about it. But all I'm going to say is, in the nutrition world, we've had lots of ways to test the gut. It's been expensive, it's been yucky because we're using stool samples, it's thrown out a lot of false negatives, so it's not completely accurate, and it doesn't actually tell us a hell of a lot. So this one is a finger prick of blood. Again, we can do it in our own home. Health empowerment yet again. It's telling us how our body is metabolizing tryptophan. Now that is basically, is our food fueling us or inflaming us? We can see that, and then we can make the amendments. Fibre plays a part in amending that. The BalanceOil plays a part in amending that. And if you have immune system issues, which also shows up in the test, then we have the extended multivitamins. So we already have the solutions, but now we have the test to show you that you need it, because this is test-based nutrition. And we're not just telling you, take this, take that. We're saying, let's test you to see if you need it, and let's test you again to prove it's working. So I'm just going to share with you now, this is a testimonial from one of my clients. I didn't ask her for it. She just, 8th of April this year, it just appeared on my Facebook timeline, and I almost cried reading it. This woman is so crazy and didn't listen to anything I said. So when I read this testimonial, I was like, wow. So Sue, I love her. She's from my Liverpool clinic. So my dearest Jack, the first time I met you, you changed my life. Your kindness and knowledge is beyond exceptional. Thank you. I've persisted and got better and better as time's gone by. I've listened to you, everything you followed, every step you asked. No, she didn't. Thank you. So much so, I've just been given the all clear from my broken heart clinic, which is her cardiologist, when she was told she was in heart failure. I'm over the moon. Thank you. The doctor is amazed by the dramatic changes in my well-being. He's given me the option to stay or come off the last of my medication. Thank you. I had asked for a 6-month checkup, which he agreed. I've told him all about you and Zinzino, bioresonance, homeopathy, the lot. I bet you again. Thank you. It's been an absolutely fabulous journey of wellness and laughs. I'll be right with you for the rest of my long, healthy life. Thank you. So just going back to that slide we started with, where we was talking about this disempowering model, and then I said, I dream of having something where we can empower people to take control back. Do you think Zinzino might be that? Do you think it might provide people with really key information so they can start to take control of their health? And then they've got products that they can reverse these issues within 120 days? Well, if it's not that, then show me what else it is. I'm just going to end with a quote, because we say about this meeting, it's not a meeting, it's a movement, and it absolutely is a movement. We need movement. We need people to take action. We need people to listen to this and say, yeah, I want to be part of that army. I want to get out there and change it for the future of the children. A movement starts with a clear vision of a world different than the one we live in today. I hope that's resonated. Thank you.